Welcome to the Always On podcast. I am your host, Duncan MacPherson, and on this podcast, our objective is to enable our audience, which are very high caliber fee-for-service professionals, to always be working on their business and on themselves. To that end, on today's podcast, I had a great conversation with Kevin Bishopp. Kevin is a vice president at First Trust. He's a performance coach. He's a national speaker. He can be found on LinkedIn. And he is absolutely unrivaled in terms of his insights and innovations in the areas of practice management and client acquisition. So in this episode, we talked about a business that's growing, teaming, scaling, and then ultimately exiting based on endgame and exit strategies. So if you like this podcast, please like and share, tell your colleagues, and if you have any ideas for themes and topics down the road, just let us know. Thanks for listening. Well, I'm excited to have a returning guest to the Always On podcast, Kevin Bishopp, who often comes off as being a quiet and understated thought leader, but in truth is a stealth bomber when it comes to leading edge innovations. Very excited to see you, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Duncan. Great to see you. You got a little bit more tan, so I know the sun has been shining in Kelowna as it has been down here in the state of Washington. So it's a great time of year.
Yeah, I love this time of year. Lots of pickleball, golf, just outside all the time. But really looking forward to this conversation. And just for everybody, if you've not met Kevin before, we all know that it's a lot easier to manage something when you can measure it. And so his mindset around the analytics of business development are unrivaled. But I think what makes Kevin even more interesting is his approach to the creative and the qualitative side of business development. Kevin, you and I have done masterminds. We've done a lot of brainstorming. And bottom line is that AI white paper does not get across the finish line without your efforts. So, I mean, you and I worked on AI in the early days, tried to figure it out as it relates to how it could impact a financial professional. But I really appreciate your diligence in seeing it through from the standpoint of making it relevant and compliance. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. It's an exciting space, and that was all within the last 2 years, right? It feels like there's this long history. AI has been on the scene for much longer than 2 years. That's what it feels like, but in reality, it's been less than 2 years. We started those conversations in December of 2023, and the world is changing rapidly. The phrase that I'm using with the advisors and teams that I'm coaching is AI is not the future, right? AI is the present, because you've got to get on board. There's so much power. Your phrase, it could put so much more sand in the hourglass. The productivity, it's reshaping the capabilities for financial advisors and teams in terms of what they're capable of delivering.
Yeah, no doubt. And just for everybody listening in, we're going to really focus on the signal, not the noise, regarding AI. Our most complex clients that we're coaching with right now, AI can impact their progression from growing to teaming to scaling and right through to exiting. And all the leadership elements that come from that. But we're really going to focus on what's realistic, what's allowable, and what's proven. But Kevin, I got to share this with you. So you know that we have a team here that, among other things, does software development.
Mm-hmm.
So our lead in that space, very, very skilled, been with us for 20 years. So he bought $100 credit on Claude. Claude is AI that will actually write code. $100. And he got 8 weeks worth of very high quality code done in 1 week.
Yeah.
And he still had $50 left on the credit. So that is in the marketplace the equivalent of $25,000 of productivity for $50. And the quality has been exceptional. And I asked him, I said, Darren, it's like having another Darren. And he said, it's actually like having 3 or 4 other Darrens
Yeah.
because it's relentless. Like, not to get too far down this path, but a software engineer, somebody who's developing software and code, they have to immerse themselves. And if they have to step back and grab something to eat or go attend to something, they come back. It's like starting over, getting their brain re-engaged. Now they can leave and come back, and the AI is still producing full throttle. So it's limitless. It's incredibly far reaching. But again, I want to come back to ultimately what's practical, what's going to move the needle in the areas of growing, teaming, scaling, and exiting.
Yeah.
So let's get into that, Kevin. First of all, from the standpoint of leading edge in innovations, what have you seen recently that maybe you and I haven't even talked about yet?
Well, I think the interesting way to attack this is to look at those 4 areas: the growing, the teaming, the scaling, the exiting, and ask what are the biggest challenges, right? What's the biggest obstacle faced in each of those areas? So in the growing space, for which is typically the solo advisor, it's capacity, right? You get it, you get a number of clients, you continue to grow, you build your brand, you get more referrals than you can actually handle, and you're on your heels. So in that space, for the growing advisor, when it comes to AI, you're looking at productivity tools as being one of the primary means of helping you deal with that capacity problem. Hands down, the number one capability that's helping smaller teams that are growing are the AI tools that equip note taking, task creation, automated email drafts for follow-ups, all around what most people call review meetings, what you and I call strategy and tactical meetings. Right? It is taking 90% of the admin out. These would be tools like Jump, Zox, G Preferences, Firefly, Fathom. The list goes on and on. But that is hands down the number one capability for the growing advisor to get in place to free up their time, because it takes a note taker out. It removes the burden of the advisor taking notes, getting the extra people out of the meeting. We're not going back to the desk and dictating into Dragon or our iPhone. We're not typing up a bunch of notes. It is, within 60 seconds to 2 minutes, you've got it's not actually a transcription, and it's not even a recording, right? It's a meeting summary, right? And you can organize the template so that it organizes your meeting summaries the way that you want them to be organized. It's draft tasks ready for a CRM if there's that level of integration, and it's a draft follow-up email to clients ready for your review. And then you or somebody in your team clicks submit, and then the notes become permanent record in the CRM. The tasks get submitted into the CRM. The email you would then modify and tailor, make it sound more like you, because AI rarely sounds like you. You have to finish the task there, and that goes out to a client. And this is all happening within minutes, as opposed to hours of follow-up. So the question then becomes, what do you get to do with the extra time that you create? So then we just start looking at, what are the other problem areas? Well, we really need to tighten up our messaging. Let's use an AI enabled marketing suite to help tighten up our messaging. Let's use a tool like Jasper AI to get in and look at content that we've uploaded, our current website, and then ask it to write drafts on our behalf. And we just ramp up the level of productivity, and the level of quality can increase as well. So that would be my go-to for the growing advisor is, let's solve the capacity constraints. But there's also some other add-ons in the areas of capabilities, Because if you're a solo advisor and you want to expand your value that you deliver to clients, there's additional capabilities. These would be tools like wealth.com, AI driven estate planning capabilities. These would be things like a Holistiplan, the tools that can scan documents, AI tools that can scan tax returns, documents, statements, pull them into your system so that we don't have you, the advisor, reading them. We don't have team members typing in positions and cost bases off of statements. Right? The future will be AI just scans and looks at all that stuff and ports it over into your technology suite, your tech stack, and the information goes where it needs to go. Right? So for me, the most of the cool capabilities are here. We're now shifting to the integration phase, which is really going to exponentially increase the power of AI. When the planning tool talks to the CRM, which talks to uh, your marketing engine, right? When it all comes together using AI is when we're going to see productivity go through the roof.
Okay, so yeah, and a lot of what you touched on there is in that white paper. So if you haven't received that yet, make sure you go to paretosystems.com or see us on LinkedIn and we can get that to you. I like, very insightful, by the way, and I liked your frame there around obstacles and problems that AI can solve. And just jumping ahead a little bit, I mean, we'll probably touch on for 50% of this conversation AI impact, and then we'll get into other uh, observations. But yeah, in the realm of growing, it does come down to time, and ultimately, in the spirit of advocacy, we want to be mindful of relationship drift, because as a relationship does stray, the probability of advocacy diminishes. So what you described there regarding that note taking is just the consistency and the quality of the communication and the resonance, the impact that has on a client. It really levels the playing field for somebody who's maybe not quite fully hit their stride yet, but they can play up at a higher level, impacting those relationships. And you're absolutely right. We're now there as it relates to CRM, Jump, Zox, and some of this other functionality that really integrates um, proprietary relationship management, not just KYC fundamentals.
Yep.
So yeah, I love that. That's excellent. Um, now let's shift then. Let's shift into AI's impact on teaming, because that is, when somebody actually realizes, okay, it's not a little book of business anymore, it's an actual business, and there's HR dynamics. What have you seen from an HR perspective where AI can play a role?
Well, maybe not so much from the HR perspective, but from the process perspective. Because when you go from solo, right, when you go for something that's small, tight team, limited number of people, right, it's easy to manage. It's easier to manage the culture. It's easier to manage the processes. But once you start layering on team, right, to get additional capabilities, right, the phrase that I've been using with those teams is you have to fall in love with process, right? You have to fall in love with process because as your team gets larger, right, you're now passing work between more people potentially. And process is the best defense against complexity, right? Anything in any field that needs to be done well needs to be done right. When jobs and lives are on the line, whether we're talking about the military, whether we're talking about the medical field, whatever it is, you will find process. Right? You will find checklists, organization, process, because it is the best defense against complexity and keeping quality at the level that it needs to be at. So when I was thinking about the obstacles for teams, the three words that I wrote down were process, right? Number two, culture, because now as our organization is growing, we got to make sure that we protect the culture, because there's nothing worse than having somebody on a team that's not the right fit. And then the third term that I wrote down was communication. Right? Those are the hot button issues for teams that are growing. And you could say that process and culture and organizational structure, those can all overlap to a certain degree. But in terms of where AI plays a role, you again just ask, what are the biggest challenges? So communication, right? Uh, an AI enabled CRM that can pass tasks back and forth, that can be intuitive, insightful. When you think about process, you think about tools like Tango and Scribe that can help you document and organize processes. You think about tools like your GPTs, Chat GPT, Perplexity, Claude, etc. You want to create an organizational chart, workflows, etc. Just dive in there and as you know, right, give it a great prompt, and I'll let you share your prompt framework. Give it a great prompt, and you can increase the probability that you'll get higher quality output with what it is that you're trying to generate.
Well, it's funny. I'm looking at my notes and I wrote down from a leadership perspective, as you're embracing the concept of teaming and then where that can take somebody is creating a culture of process and communication. So we're completely in sync. Some people resist that because they feel it's too confining, but in actuality, it's liberating because nobody's winging it. Nobody's left to their own devices. But, from a culture on teaming, so it's incredible. I talked to an advisor who brought on a protege who had some really high skill sets, but was flailing a little bit on his own. So they said, okay, let's come together. And the lead advisor said, you're not viable on your own with what you've got, but you've got a little vein of gold here. But then the lead advisor said, we need you to be a rainmaker. So he set this person out to do cold calling, spray and pray. And you can imagine how that went. And I said to the lead, I said, you would be much better off and everybody would be much happier if you would just empower your protege to stir the pot and talk at a minimum to the 80% of your clients who are probably neglected with no agenda. There's no cold calling. There's just have the protege reach out to the 80% of your clients and just check in, touch base, a call rotation. How are you doing? That would be so much more productive, creating that culture and having that process. So this is, for some, it's counterintuitive, but this notion of going out and trying to chase down new business as opposed to just protecting and attracting from within, that just to me seems like a much better approach.
Yeah, the way that I drive that home with advisors who are resistant to that thought, because let's be honest, the older advisors, they were hunter gatherers, right? Eat what you kill. So their default mode is my successor needs to be like me. Have that same attitude. Sometimes I will use the hunter gatherer versus the farmer analogy, because what they've built is more like a farm, right? There's equipment, there's tools, there's processes. We've got fields that we've got to rotate. There's all these things that are going on, and there's a farm that needs to be maintained. I always ask the advisor, I said, hey, if you wanted to get $5 million in the door, right? Or you wanted to get a new $5 million client in the door, can you do that better or can your protege do that better? And I say, well, I have a much higher probability of getting the $5 million in the door. I say, okay, great. How long would it take your protege to get $5 million in the door? Well, they might have to go get 10 $500,000 opportunities or 20 $250,000 opportunities. The point is, hey, let's liberate the senior experienced advisor who has the gray hair, the expertise, the relationships, the network, right? And who now has a larger team behind them, deeper bench, multi-generational team, right? Process driven so that nothing's going to slip through the cracks, right? And let's turn them loose to go work their network, and the growth rates will continue to increase.
Well, okay, so perfect. And then so let's combine the whole notion of culture, process, and communication. If the protege is reaching out to the 80%, and elevating their client experience. He and they, the enterprise, is now referable and will probably get introduced to those $500,000 clients.
Sure.
Bread and butter.
Yep.
If the lead advisor goes to the 20% and says, we're leveling up, we're deepening our bench, and with, as part of that, we're building a brand within a brand so that I can stay focused on our clients whose needs are more complex and more fluid and dynamic. So now that gray-haired advisor is more referable, more
Yes.
relevant and impactful to that group, because they now know that he's all things to those people while he's still so if those clients want to introduce somebody over here, they're well taken care of, but they are getting a higher level of service. So that brand within a brand, and your point about the farming, the tending, not chasing, it's a slower outcome, a lag in terms of cause and effect, but the results are going to be much stickier, much more sustainable. So yeah, that is profound. Okay, so let's go further into the find versus found dynamic of client acquisition. I don't know if you've run into this, but this is becoming more pronounced. So there are some advisory teams that we've coached with who have dabbled in the whole realm of search engine optimization. Okay, so the notion there is, okay, in our geographic area, when a prospective client has come to the realization that I'm done with my current advisor and they are alone with their thoughts, trying to figure out, okay, where are my options? Often they'll go online, they'll go on a search engine. So here's the premise. What is that person looking for? What are their unmet needs? What do they want? What are they typing in to the search engine? I talked to an advisory team not long ago and I said, just go into ChatGPT and look at your value through the lens of the prospective client. So we took the ideal client profile that we created for this team and said, okay, I'm a first generation self-made business owner or professional or executive. I'm looking for a new financial advisor. What keywords should I use on Google to help me establish and find somebody where there'd be a good fit? That was the prompt, if essentially. And instantly, the keywords were presented. So now, again, it's less of the, spray and pray, much more targeted.
Yep.
And then, of course, there's a whole dynamic around what it is they're going to find when they get to that advisor's website as a result of that process. But I'd love to see if you have any insights on that, just as a starter.
Well, I think the mind shift is we have to help these advisors have an abundance mentality, because by default they're looking. Oh, am I there?
You're there.
Yeah. Okay. The mind shift for these advisors is to move toward a more abundance mentality. Because the focus oftentimes is, well, if we narrow our ideal client and we get very, very specific, we might be missing something, right? We're going to miss opportunities that fall outside of our area of expertise. So they are resistant to getting too focused, right? They still want to shoot the shotgun, and we're saying, no, you've got to get the scope, right? You got to get the rifle and scope, and let's be very, very specific around the target. And the reason that they resist is they don't have an abundance mentality. They don't think there's enough targets in the channel that we want them to narrow and focus in on, when in reality, there's an incredible amount of opportunity, right? Wealth transfer markets are near at all-time highs. Depending upon who you talk to, the future looks very, very bright. I mean, there's all sorts of economic signs that are positive. It's just getting them to realize that, yes, we're gonna take away the broad shotgun approach. We're gonna get more specific, more targeted, and you will reap the rewards of that as a team with higher quality clients coming in who appreciate you that much more, because when they're finding you, right, what they're realizing is your messaging touches on their specific pain points, as opposed to being another full service open architecture wealth management firm who works specifically with high net worth investors and their families, right? The vanilla generic value proposition.
Okay, I want everybody to really, really dig into what Kevin's saying here, because yes, the abundance mindset is self-fulfilling, especially now based on the era that we're in. However, that necessitates a very deliberate approach to professional contrast. Like, how do you stand out and differentiate?
Feeling like you've hit a plateau? Or maybe you're growing, but it's costing you time, energy, and clarity. At Pareto Systems, we've created the ultimate guide to financial advisor coaching. A no-fluff, insight-packed resource to help you assess if coaching is right for you. Whether you're just starting out, scaling up, or preparing to transition your business, this guide breaks down what to expect, what to avoid, and how to make the most of the process. Download it now. The link is in the description of this podcast. And now, back to the show.
So part of that is now your thought leadership, reputational equity, subject matter expertise. If you tie all of this into the search engine optimization driver for client acquisition, the natural conduit to that is creating content. Creating content that addresses unmet needs, that helps you elevate how you're perceived and how you're described. What this does is activates permission marketing, where you're not chasing, you're not disruptive, you're not interrupting people. You're letting people come to their own conclusions and raise their hand because they're saying, hey, your hook for this content that you've created, that's speaking to me. I want that. And of course, as you know, and you were very, very early on this, using AI to create, or at least get you in the red zone around creating some content that you can personalize. This is a game changer. Now, in terms of tying all this together. So these are great points here, and feel free to continue, because I've got one other point I want to make on what you described, but feel free to run with that.
So it's great for content creation from a marketing perspective, but it's also incredible in terms of elevating the client experience. I had a team on the phone. This was 3 months ago, and I asked them. I said, "What do you feel is your biggest weakness as a team when you're thinking about the value that you deliver to your best clients? So your top 20% as a team, what do you feel is your biggest weakness?" And they said, "We've observed that our best clients are concerned about whether or not they've educated their children effectively when it comes to savings, delayed gratification, basics of investing, debt management, etc." Like they said, that's a big blind spot for us. We would love to do more in that space. And they thought it was a monumental task. And I said, "Hey, gang, do me a favor. Who on your team is the best with ChatGPT?" And this gal raised her hand. I said, "Go to ChatGPT, type the following prompt." Right? We are a wealth management firm in the Kansas City area focused primarily on successful executives and entrepreneurs. We've observed that many of them have significant concerns about whether or not they've educated their children effectively when it comes to savings and money and discipline, delayed gratification, etc. Provide an outline of the critical topics to be addressed to fill this void. Provide resources, links, YouTube videos, blogs, etc. We clicked the button and they had their outline built. There are 10 topics that they said, okay, we're going to create some content here. Then we just said, okay, here's how you use ChatGPT to get drafts of blog posts, Canva for presentations, or beautiful.ai, etc. And they're off and running, and they're going to fill an unmet need for their very best clients. They're going to become more fee worthy, deliver more value. And the way that they're going to get this done is they're using AI to get more productive with some of the blocking and tackling so that they can elevate their client experience. Right? It's a dynamic space. I've been telling teams AI will take you as far as you let it. Right.
Back to your earlier point, we're at a moment where it is non-optional, and it's not going to replace a financial advisor who's enlightened. It's going to liberate them to be more valuable, more impactful, and indispensable to their clients. But what you described there is textbook. I've seen variations of that. So the premise is, okay, who's the ideal client? What do they want? What are their unmet needs? And how do you help them realize that there's an alignment between all of that and the value you bring? Yeah. What you described can be brought to life in minutes or hours, not starting with a blank sheet of paper, but starting like almost at the finish line. All they have to do is put their own touches on it. And, from a compliance perspective, there's nothing promissory around products, pricing, and performance. This is all around someone's life and their unmet needs and things that are impacted by financial independence. Yeah. But okay, you bring up a really good point. So, we're known at Pareto around the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, but often we see examples where the 70-20-10 rule comes into play. Now, I remember telling my kids, live off 70% of whatever you make, save 20%, invest 10%, or the other way around, whatever your risk tolerance is. But you're living off 70% of what you make, and the rest you're putting to work for you and your future. Okay? Fundamental. How does it impact business development, client acquisition, the 70-20-10 rule? 70% at a minimum of your investment of effort and resources on business development should be towards your existing clients at a minimum. For many teams, it's 100%. They do no convincing. Everything's to the people who are already convinced. But let's just say 70% for competitor proofing, getting out in front of money in motion, and advocacy. What's the 20 and the 10? The 20 is the related and adjacent activities that could include strategic partners, events, and pot stirring that can create introductions to prospective clients, or that can be dual purpose. They can be for prospective clients, or they can be for existing clients. And then the 10% is the transformative, which is outside of your core. Just shows that you're innovative. The clay is soft, but this is where you're starting to look at things like, okay, we're going to do video, we're going to do automated reviews, we're going to do client testimonials, and we're going to do search engine optimization, and really level up our website so that we can be found by the right client. This is a framework that we're finding is having an impact, and we're seeing budgets on SEO increase. We're seeing budgets on staying niche focused around target marketing, but just going outside of just the day-to-day around advocacy. So any thoughts or insights on that?
So the quick list of things you just gave was search engine optimization, video, content, etc. I would argue that if you're going to go from team to scaling, those activities have to be handled by somebody other than the rainmaking advisor. Right?
Good point.
And so if you really want to scale, you've got to institutionalize these capabilities outside of somebody who's responsible for face-to-face interaction with clients, networking, running the business, etc. And that's the inflection point that gets you from team to scaling, is the division of duties and labor, and getting everybody on the team working in the highest and best use of their capability. So for a senior advisor to be stressing over search engine optimization, complete waste of time. Get it to a younger, more tech savvy, could even be an intern on the team. Get that to your marketing team. Right? That's the next mind shift for teams, is to say, okay, if we really want to create scale, now we have to double down on specialization, right? Which then amplifies the need to be process driven because the team's getting bigger, right? Amplifies the need for great communication. But this is how you build value, right? Because ultimately, for the owners, right, value is built when you get closer and closer to being obsolete. Like, real value is built for the advisors when they get closer and closer to being obsolete, because the acquiring firm will pay up for higher certainty of future profits, higher certainty of client retention, higher certainty of future cash flows, right? I, as a buyer, will pay more for that if I know that there's process, organization, discipline, clients who are connected not just to the advisor or to the team, or an investment process that's institutionalized, not just connected to one advisor, right? I will pay up for that. And so the magic of the scaling comes with specialization, process, communication, and replicating service delivery to multiple locations, right? Multiple states, but putting it all under one shingle so that it builds value as opposed to aggregated books of business.
Well, that's a great point. And right back to your earlier mention around the hourglass and putting more sand in. It's funny. I had a conversation just this past Friday with a very substantial team, hit their stride, massive First Trust loyalists for a long time. And it's funny, the lead advisor, they are really catching with respect to scaling, but now he's starting to think about his end game. He's lifelong planner, right? Where is this all going? And to your point, I said to him, Larry, you have to be capable of doing anything and everything within your firm. Like, literally, where to order toner for the photocopier and where the thank you cards are. But we need to make sure that you're in a position where you don't have to do anything. You could do anything and everything, but you don't need to do anything. That's how well built out your organization and structure is. You've made yourself obsolete. You're not at the mercy of any maverick talent. Now, I used to say, Kevin, that was what I just described was an 18-month journey. I'd say to teams all the time, I'd say to lead advisors, set a goal to take a 6-month sabbatical. It'll take you 18 months to be there, where you are literally obsolete. You don't need to be present for your enterprise to be productive. I think with AI and some of the things that you've talked about, that's probably shortened to 9 to 12 months, maybe even sooner.
Yeah.
Just based on efficiency.
So I would agree with that. The potential bugaboo in that scenario is the 6-month sabbatical from managing relationships for your best clients, right? That's the hard part. But what's interesting to me, I heard this a couple of weeks ago, and this brings AI into this example as well. Well, I'll just ask you, Duncan, in the last 20 years, how much has technology changed?
Well, from my perspective,
like iPhone wasn't around. Like, let's just be real.
So you go back to fax machines and, the novelty of email, because this industry was a laggard in email.
Yeah.
And then the gradual. So I think of my BlackBerries and the mobility and the horsepower that was in the palm of my hands. It was pretty gradual relative to the last 2 years, the spike with AI.
But if you take a snapshot of technology 20 years ago to today, they look nothing like each other.
No, agreed.
Right? Okay. Take a snapshot of relationship management 20 years ago and today.
Well, it's like Chris Jepson said.
No, very little change, right? Still based on trust, respect,
I see.
Value received, right? So advisors who are technology resistant or worried about AI, overhauling the business and then becoming obsolete. No, it's equipping you to do more of what you do best, which is be
Okay,
in relationship with clients.
I see what you mean. The
Right?
concept of relationship management hasn't really changed,
Hasn't
but
changed.
the fee worthiness that somebody has because of their enlightened commitment to relationship management, like it's like Jepson was saying, like there will come a time where you'll still be fee worthy, even though you'll be able to give wealth management away. It's
Yeah.
because the enlightened, the sophisticated, complex client requires a client experience and requires that bedside manner. That's what's going to make the advisor fee worthy. But I see what you're saying. The concept hasn't really changed.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, bottom line is the lead. Okay, so again, I come back to growing, teaming, scaling, exiting. So where are you in that progression? And in the interest of plateau avoidance, like keep going. Your exit might be 5, 10, 20 years from now. That's fair. But just the culmination of every investment of effort you make, getting things out of your head and your team's head, documented, organized, structured, is incredibly profound. Just chip away at that checklist of things you need to do. Now, here's another thing, twist. For some advisors, a stepping stone to their exit strategy this is surging recently, includes a change of environment. I don't know if you're having these conversations, but I'm talking to more and more advisors who are saying to me, I've got 5 or 10 years left. I don't know if this environment's in my best interest, let alone my client's best interest, just based on everything that's unfolding. I'm having that conversation more frequently. AI is playing a role in how someone can establish where's the best fit, where's the best alignment, what's the most of the good, the least of the bad. And then how do you represent that? How do you communicate all that?
Yeah. So for clarity purposes for the audience, when you say environment, you're talking about wirehouse, RIA, independent, like the ecosystem that you're operating in.
Yeah.
There's also this other dynamic where we're seeing advisors who say, I want to be in Florida 6 months out of the year, right? But still do what I do. Well, technology is making that more and more real, right? So there's the supervisory environment, wirehouse, independent, bank channel, insurance, RIA, et cetera. But there's also, physical environment in terms of, where do you want to build this thing and where do you want to operate out of? That's becoming more nimble, more fluid as well. When we start to talk about exiting, we have a lot of advisors who say, hey, what is my business worth? Right? They want to know, how do I value the business? And I always come back to the same phrase. I tell them, your business is worth exactly what you can get somebody else to pay for it. That's the only thing that's true in that space. So ask yourself, if you're the advisor on the other side of the transaction, what would you pay up for? And just start writing those things down. What would you pay up for if you were buying another advisory business? And start writing those things down. And that becomes your to-do list in terms of exiting. Right? And it's all the things that you and I and Chris and other good people in our space have preached for years, right? Higher client quality, more process driven, connecting clients to not just the advisor, other people on the team, consistent brand messaging, fee worthiness, all read the advisor playbook. I can see it right there on the desk. It's always there. Read the Blue Square Method, right? Those are the go-to manuals for building value for an advisory business. And I just love that statement that says, hey, your business is worth what you can get somebody else to pay for it. So just start making that list and you will land at the right answers.
Well, and the framework, and you covered a lot of ground there. So first of all, the framework for helping somebody see what it's worth and not focus on what it costs to acquire is like anything, you stage your business based on the parameters of that top acronym. Be at the top of your game because your business is tidy, optimized, and proprietary. That's where people start to realize and come to their own conclusions. This is not a book of business. This is a business, and this is why it is more valuable than some of the other businesses I've seen. It's tidy, completely clean, optimized, fully optimized with measurable KPIs, and proprietary. Everything's documented as a knowledge for profit professional. But I want to come back to something else you said around environment. I mean, for some advisors, a wirehouse is the ideal environment. For some other advisors, they need to be more independent, entrepreneurial. We help people come to their own conclusions. What's in your best interest? What's in your client's best interest? But the beauty is, with technology and also just the appetite of the marketplace, geography doesn't even matter anymore. For the most part, relationship management can be done remotely without dilution. The impact can be incredible. That sabbatical, the advisors I've seen take a 6-month sabbatical, they're in touch, but out of reach. Like, they're in touch. They're still having interactions with their clients, but they're talking more about, okay, you're already financially independent. What does that all mean to you? And what are you going to do because of what you've accomplished? And this is what I'm doing. And the communication has changed a little bit. It's not that they're not avoiding the technical elements of what they're managing, but they're just looking at it and expanding their thinking beyond that, which is powerful. But these advisors that are scaling, who now have satellites in 10 states, 15 states, because they are so process driven, it's arguably the best time to be a financial professional right now and into the future, just based on these realities.
Well, I think about the advisors who are scaling, and my heart rate beats a little faster for the ones who are trying to do that without the process, without the consistency, without the controls, because they're just exponentially adding to the mess, right? To do it right, you build the manual, your franchise manual, right? And most of the time when I say franchise, people think, fast food, right? But Ritz-Carlton, it's franchise. Behind the scenes, completely process driven, right? High-end retail, you want to go buy a Porsche, you want to go buy a Bentley, right? Feels very, very bespoke, feels very, very customized, but behind the scenes, it is process driven. So when you hear us say franchise, right, just substitute the word process and consistency. And if you're going to scale, right, and expand, you want to use that as a blueprint, right? Every time we open an office, and if we're going to tuck in other advisors, and this is the place where I see it go sideways, we tuck in advisors with the agreement that they adopt, right? They adopt our investment policy. They adopt our process. They adopt our marketing, because they see the power in liberating themselves from kind of the mess that they have. They might be a good book of business, but liberating themselves from some of that chaos in order for them to focus on the highest and best use of their time and continuing to grow their business. So I concur with you 100%. It is an incredible time to be in this space. It's especially incredible if you are a younger advisor and you're connecting to the right teams. Incredible opportunity ahead.
Well, and no conversation between you and I would be complete without acknowledging the art and science, and the art being the bespoke, the client experience, the relationship management, but the science being the habits and rituals that are supported by process. It's funny, this, I see this pretty much everywhere I go. So I've got some friends that I golf with on a regular basis, and one is definitely better than the rest of us. He's not stronger. He's not more physically. I mean, he puts in the hours and the effort, but what really stood out for me was his preparation when he stands over every ball.
Yep.
And his swing thoughts. And I joked with him because I mentioned that I was lagging on my swing thoughts, and I said I probably have 2 or 3, and he goes, I think I've got 30. And he goes, whenever I make a mistake, I know that, okay, that was number 17. And he was kind of joking and embellishing, but it was very funny that his level of awareness for cause and effect, effort, preparation, activity, and outcome was so incredibly precise. He's not physically stronger or better. It's just this culmination of having this process. Now, I want to ask your opinion on the concept of habit formation. So I'm sure you've studied this too, and the progression of trigger, pattern, and reward for habit formation. Because if somebody wants to scale up and minimize dilution, they have to be mindful of this. It's not just having the physical and the digital playbook. It's this culture of habits and rituals. So for me, the trigger is everything's scheduled. Everything's scheduled. Meetings are scheduled. Relationship, it's all scheduled. Everything is scheduled. It's not just an intention, it's scheduled. Pattern is recognizing the power of incrementalism, the compounding effect of these habits. And the reward is recognition, recognizing outcomes. This is the difference between practice ideas and practice management.
Yeah.
So I'd love any insights you've got on that creating that culture of habits and rituals.
So Jim Collins, great strategy writer, right? Wrote Good to Great, Built to Last, How the Mighty Have Fallen. He would say that improvement efforts, oftentimes people try to change too much at once and they dilute their efforts. And so because they're trying to change so many things, they don't see the impact of making a material change. And so they look and they say, well, it didn't really do much. So they revert right back to previous behavior. Right. So a great tip for everybody who's listening in or watching is figure out the 1 or 2 things that need to change now and get them in place, build the process, make it a habit, and then make the next change. If we go back to the golf analogy, if you're a 25 handicap and you want to get better and you go see a great instructor, at the end of that lesson, he or she should tell you, okay, here's the 1 or 2 things you need to work on until I see you next time. Right? Because if they start saying, okay, you gotta slow your takeaway, you gotta drag it back, you're picking it up, you gotta have your wrist in the right position at the top, you gotta start the downswing with your hips, like you're toast, right? You're toast.
It's overloaded.
So it's this incrementalism. I mean, it goes back to the atomic habits, right? Consistent 1% improvements built up over time is what delivers sustainable results.
Well, and back to the habits, I mean, because of the power of the law of diminishing intent, it's like I had a friend a while back who sent me a video on health and wellness. And the crux of this video was on parasites and gut health and things like that. And it was jarring. Okay, what's going on in here? And so, of course, it offered a protocol of things to detox and flush and also armor up. Who wouldn't see the merit in this once you're in possession of this information? So I go out and buy everything. I start launching in and sort of chipping away. And one disruption, you travel, you're knocked off course. Something gets in the way because it's not a habit yet. It's an intention. This, I feel, as I get a little older, I feel like this is what separates the best from the rest, is seeing it through and making it just this absolutely as natural as breathing, whether it's personal development, professional development, just being mindful of habit formation to make sure something is sustainable.
Yeah. I get asked all the time, what's the one quality that separates the best advisor or the best teams from everybody else? Right. you or I, we give a keynote, somebody comes up, strikes up a conversation, says, hey, really good information, but if you had to tell us one thing that the best do that others don't, okay, I always give the same answer. It's execution.
Yeah.
Right. It's the level of execution. And this is where Nike was brilliant 45 years ago with their tagline, right? Just do it. And I hadn't really thought about the fact that their tagline doesn't say just win, right? They're not even talking about the outcome. They're saying, hey, just do it. Just get out, just move, just sweat, right? Get that momentum built, make it a habit, embrace, the incremental improvements, try to do a few things, a limited number of things at any one time, and you will make lasting, meaningful change. What most people find somewhat distasteful in that is you don't see it overnight, right? It's not a quick fix. There's not immediate gratification. We live in a world where everybody is, we want immediate gratification. We want the information. We want it now, etc. And this is a slow burn, right? This is just slow, methodical progress. And that is what separates the best that I work with from everybody else.
Well, I get asked the same question. My answer is very much in sync with yours, just different phraseology. I just say the best work on their business relentlessly. The rest work in their business transactionally. So one's directional and one's completely at peace with outcomes. You know this. Most of the teams we work with, they don't even need us. Like life is good, but they have pretty high standards, pretty high expectations. But part of our relationship management, just saying, just get yourself into a state of Zen where you're just at peace with whatever comes from all these efforts. Just immerse yourself in the activities. So again, not transactional, not working in the business, trading time for money, on the business, on themselves, relentlessly, continuously. We're basically saying the same things.
Yep.
Okay, well, here we are. The time just zipped by. There's still more to cover, but closing comments, thoughts?
Well, first off, thank you for the time that I get to spend with you and your team. Being at First Trust, we have an incredible organization, but our partnership with Pareto Systems, the organization that you've built, has been fantastic. We love getting to work with you and your coaches and your team. And to be honest, you and I, we travel all the time. We're on planes, and you have to either be a little bit crazy or really love what you do to do what it is that we do. And it's probably a little bit of both, or it's a lot of both, maybe. I can't tell you how exciting this space is. I've been doing it for 21, 22 years. And it's a great time to be in this space. And it's especially a great time for the teams that are taking action, who are embracing AI. It's going to be a hard road ahead for those that are resistant and aren't using the capabilities, because they're going to get surpassed by those that are. And so I love these conversations that we get to have 3 or 4 times a year. You've been a great partner for us at First Trust, and more importantly, that a great friend. And so I genuinely appreciate that.
Well, right back at you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I pinch myself on a regular basis that I have this relationship with First Trust. And for the most part, it doesn't even feel like work. I mean, you're right. The airplanes and airports are a little tough sometimes, but the actual interactions, whether it's like this or with the community of advisors that are just adore First Trust, that does not work. And I often get so much more out of those interactions than they do. From a crowdsourcing perspective, a finger on the pulse, what's working and what separates the best from the rest. Yeah, it's just a phenomenal time to be alive. So yeah, Kevin, thank you very much. And where can somebody track you down if they want to understand some of your core work?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. You can also go to our firm's website, which is FT Portfolio. So F First T Trust, ftportfolios.com. You can get a login to the advisor side of our website. And we have a best practices page for our entire team, because it's not just me. There are 7 of us at First Trust who do the same type of work. We've got 45 plus videos, tools, content. Jackie on our team has a great blog. The easy button is just talk to your local First Trust wholesaler. They are the access point to everything that First Trust does for financial advisors.
And you're going through an exercise right now where you're refining and optimizing that part of the website because it's grown so substantially. Do you mind just reminding us of the 5 sort of subsections, the categories that you've created within the site?
Absolutely. So there's marketing and branding. There's client acquisition and experience. There is strategy and efficiency out there. There's a human capital portion, and then there is a growth section. Right. So I'm doing that off the top of my head. I believe those are the 5. Yeah. But we're going to reorganize and make it easy so that when you come to the website, you can simply just ask it or tell, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem. And it'll be easier for you to navigate to the content because much like advisors who are aggregating books or teams that are coming together, the 7 people on our team, we all have different areas of expertise. We work slightly differently. So it can feel like 7 different franchises. And when we want to make that, a better experience for our clients. So we're eating our own cooking, for lack of a better term.
Nice. Okay. And I'll just close off. The Kraken, they're going to be better or about the same?
I think they're going to get a little bit better. They're getting bigger on the front end with Capo Caco, Mason Marchment. I've had pretty good good goaltending. But if I'm honest, there are 31 teams that are somewhat terrified because Florida's bringing everybody back. And they all live within 2 blocks of their practice rink, and they drive their golf carts to practice, and they're big and they're strong and they're well coached. And they don't have guys that are all chasing big bags of money, so they're able to spread the salary around. So it's going to be a tough go for 31 other teams in these coming years.
I love reading between the lines on your answers. It just shows me that you are very, very in tune with what's going on in the world of hockey. I will say this, we're heading into an Olympic season. That team has played a lot of hockey in the last 3 years. And then to add in the Olympics this year, hopefully that opens some doors for some other teams. So we'll see what happens.
We will see. Always great to be with you, sir.
Yeah.
Take care.
Kevin, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Always On with Duncan MacPherson, where our objective is to enable professionals to always be working on their business and on themselves. Want to learn more about Duncan and his team? Visit ParetoSystems.com. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Pareto Systems. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.